Advent 4B, December the 20th, 2020. Luke 1, 26-38. It's baby time. The Advent Christmas cycle is a time of waiting, of pregnancy, of great labor, and a time with God with us, Emmanuel. It had been about a century and a half since any identifiable, obvious, in-your-face word of the Lord had been heard. And then Elizabeth and Mary entered the scene, spoken to by angels and pregnant with John and Jesus. Prior to this, the last real affirmation of Israel on the historical scene was the Maccabean revolt in 167 BC. Retrospectively, looking back on this, we see the hand of God working. But also, a great deal of all that action can be chalked up to untrammeled, righteous indignation. Antiochus IV Epiphanes, in a misguided attempt to cram Greek culture down people's throats, stepped on Israel's last nerve, and all Gehenna broke loose. He roasted a pig on the temple altar and turned the temple precincts into a nude wrestling gymnasium. And then, go figure, the God-human communications channels simply seemed to go quiet. One of the finest films of the 20th century was Cool Hand Luke. It features one character named Boss Godfrey. He's a guard on a prison farm. He wears mirrored sunglasses so you can't see his eyes. No expression on his face. He never has to speak. His rifle is near, and all he has to do is summon. And it comes to him. He is handed it. Boss Godfrey is absolute power over life and death, over the men on the chain gang. On one level, this movie is about a failure to communicate. The warden intones in a redneck drawl, "What we have here is a failure to communicate." And he can't even communicate clearly doing that. Cool Hand Luke's a clear messianic figure in the movie. He gets a bad deal in a poker game, and he bluffs and wins anyway, and says sometimes nothing can be a pretty cool hand. And that's how he gets his name. He gets beat up, but just keeps standing back up for more. He won't quit. After winning a bet by eating 50 eggs in 1 hour, he is laid out on a table, legs crossed, arms thrown out in a cruciform position. He is unceasing in his efforts to try and communicate with Boss Godfrey. The image is one of a god with no eyes, no feelings, and who only limits the lives of people. That's an image of a god, not unlike the prevailing image held at what would become known as the first Christmastide. Actually, it's not unlike the prevailing image held on this 2000th or so Christmas as well. The Greeks saw gods as dwelling on Mount Olympus, completely removed from our plight as human beings, only arriving planet-side to cavort and tamper with human life arbitrarily. Christmas tells of an incarnate God, Emmanuel, who dwells among us and within us, a God who knows what it's like to be on the chain gang. Imagine the astonishment of two pregnant mothers-to-be carrying John the Forerunner and Jesus the Messiah into the world. God goes to unusual lengths to reach humankind. God is the one who opens up the lines of communication. He needed a human being to bring the word to earth. He needed Mary. He needs you and me to feel him kicking inside of us, to be his greenhouse for growing into the world through our bodies, our lives. Certainly, that is not convenient. Perhaps in the human realm of things, there is really no convenient time in life to become pregnant with God's greatness. somebody is going to misinterpret it and shout, illegitimate. One of the prevalent questions of the holiday season is, are you ready for Christmas yet? I understand that to mean presents bought and wrapped, meal plans finalized, places for relatives to stay, house cleaned, groceries bought, presents purchased, nobody forgotten, trees trimmed, decorations up, house picked up, and presents purchased. One person actually told me that they shopped for this Christmas 2 years ago, right after that Christmas, to catch all the sales. Yeah, right. And everybody wins in Las Vegas, too. I'm sorry. Ready for Christmas is not a part of my worldview. Not that I don't try and feel terrible about failing miserably to meet the hallmark ideal every year after year after year. Somehow I can't believe that God's intention for us is to feel less than in the face of a perfect Christmas production. He made Mary feel more than she had ever felt in a time of immense stress and terror. And all of this in spite of messianic expectations. In reality, there isn't much less than a cave stable maternity ward, a manger for a cradle, and smelly livestock and shepherd thing. Let's face it, nobody really wants to celebrate Christmas exactly the same way the first Christmas happened. It was dark and fearsome and uncomfortable, with no guarantee for even minimal life the next day. Constant harassment by enemy troops, starvation, prison, torture, rape, crosses looming on the roadside in everyone's future. And being pregnant is a serious extra complication in an already chaotic, minute by minute, hang on by your fingernails in a prayer existence. Ain't no baby gonna fix this mess. So are you ready for Christmas? Ask me that question, I'll faithfully reply, I'm ready like Mary and Joseph were. No reservations. The cast of characters to keep the first Christmas on track is incredible. The angels needed a vacation after it was over. They had to talk to Zechariah and then strike him dumb for disbelief. Mary needed to be let in on this thing for sure, and then Joseph probably took a little convincing. Then Joseph had to be told to take his small family and immediately flee to Egypt and return when the coast is clear. It took a whole chorus to wake up the shepherds, and the wise man had to be told to take a different road home because they weren't too canny or cunning, just wise, and they needed to avoid the disasters. Actually, the only character that really knew what was going on, the only one that was ready for Christmas, was Herod. He had concrete plans and ongoing strategies to eliminate anything or anyone that looked messianic or kingly, and he implemented them forthwith. You can't have two kings on one territory. He knew it. He couldn't afford to have his people liberated by an earthy but heavenly king. And there God is, ruling unexpectedly from Mary's breast, in the middle of an historical people, in real bad times, facing a real painful cross. This baby is delicate hope and vulnerability. This baby is tough judgment and responsibility. To hold a baby for the first time, it made me real nervous and anxious. I knew that I could inadvertently hurt the baby and that he couldn't hurt me. And then the crying starts, and I can't figure out the reason why. My soul is judged and pierced. God, as he comes to us in this life of this baby, does not, cannot want to hurt you and me. He desires we receive him and not be afraid, to intently watch his face, to breathlessly listen to his coos, grunts, grumbles, laughs, whines, and wails for a clue as to how to respond. Listen. The word comes to us as a baby announced by singing. No volcanic eruptions, thunder, and quakes. The word comes as a child who can only be received and cannot hurt. A word that does not make us afraid, but instead makes us responsible. It's baby time. Like Gabriel told Mary, greetings, favored ones. God is within you. It's up to you now to bring him out. Amen.